Good evening. It is Thursday night. It is 8 p.m. Central, or no, Eastern, and 7 p.m. or some weird time that they just made up in the middle of the country.
Time zones are hard.
It is the American Scouser TV Thursday night podcast, or as the cool kids call it, ASTV. We're joined tonight by Trevor. How are you, Trevor?
Doing all right. Doing all right.
We've got our special guest, Gally, today. How are you, Gally?
I wouldn't. There's not much special about me except for the classrooms I spent most of my childhood in. But in all seriousness, I'm happy to be here on a Thursday night.
Interesting week in general, but we're going to expand tonight a little bit. We'll talk about Liverpool things, of course, in a Liverpool way. At ice, like that. No, we won't do that. But we'll talk about our first topic tonight. It's an EPL topic. One that I think it's breaking news. You know, it's the great thing about being live on a Thursday is there's breaking news and we get to deliver it almost like a proper news channel. And it's apparently that Liverpool are still magic and Everton are still tragic. And what we're going to talk about is, are the Blue Shite going down this year? Is this their year finally?
Oh shit.
Trevor, what do you think? Are Everton finally the unflushable turd going to be flushed?
Yeah, I'm just gonna tell everybody watching. This is the first time I'm seeing the graphic. I came into the studio a bit late. Now I'm getting this on the fly, so you're getting genuine reactions to Macka's setup here. Yeah, I think there's a very good chance with the way that Sean Dyche is setting up things against not only teams that he needs to get results from, but against teams that he doesn't, that there is a very, very good chance that Everton could break their indomitable streak and go down.
Gally, I've expressed my admiration for Sean Dyche as a coach in general. I think he's a good coach, maybe not necessarily somebody who's destined for the upper echelons of the coaching game at Real Madrid. Or Barcelona or Bayern Munich, like Sam Allardyce once said he should have been at. But does that appointment seem to you that maybe the Everton board have actually realised they may go down and they need somebody who's well equipped for the championship, who understands that kind of, bish bash bosh, hump and thump style of football that they're probably going to need to get back out?
Yeah, so I think it's a two-parter here. I'm not going to be honest with you. I think part of it is they recognize that they need a manager who can fight to stay up with what they have, which is the only way they're going to stay up is to get a whole bunch of 0-0 draws, a couple Calvert-Lewin 1-0 wins, and just hope that that's how they're able to stay up. I mean, the only chance they have is Calvert-Lewin scores some goals. Like, it could be 6. Like, that could be it. He could score 6 in the next 19 matches. And it could save their whole entire season, because there are a lot of bad football clubs in this division. I mean, Palace isn't safe at 27 points. I don't care what anyone says. They can't score, and even when they do score, they concede 3, except for to us. But, that's us. But so I think with Everton, when it comes to Dyche, I think they hired a manager hoping they could keep him up. Also knowing if they went down, he was under contract and capable of getting them back up. You know what I mean? Like, I think this was a double-sided hire. But I also think they should have hired Sean Dyche last year when they hired fucking Lampard, and they'd probably be in Palace's place right now, be trying to get into the top half of the table. Because what does Sean Dyche do? If you give him a little bit of money and a little time, he'll create a defensive stability. He's been there for 4 weeks. And they look a different side defending. I mean, they're also sitting Damari Gray, their best offensive player. They're not playing Decore, their second best offensive midfielder. Like, he's Sean Dyche. He knows what he's doing. He's like, I'll play my Burnley guys. I got Tarkowski and McNeil.
Yeah.
If I can somehow figure out a way to get Lennon on this team, I'll have an 85-year-old guy that understands how to play defense. Like, it's just Sean Dyche all over again. But I think, honestly, they're going to finish 17th. Just to piss us all off.
That's what they do. Trevor, are you ever going to give that plant some fertilizer?
No.
Well, I mean, if we just wait for Everton to go down, that's enough fertilizer for everybody for the next few
I
years.
think the best part about it is Trevor should just let everyone know that plan is fake. It is just hanging on the wall with some just bare ass leaves.
I think it's
100% real.
I think it's bad that even his fake plant is dying. Then that's even worse.
No, 100% real. It's just living entirely off of spite at this point.
Kind of like our season.
Yeah, kind of like us. But here's what I wanted to look at here. Here's their fixtures for the rest of the season. The ones that are in white are, I think, games that they could possibly win. Leicester, by virtue of the fact that you just don't know what Leicester's going to turn up. Sometimes it's either going to be the greatest of Brendan Rodgers' teams or the worst of Brendan Rodgers' teams, which is pretty much what we know happens to Brendan Rodgers' teams. But the rest of them, they got Brentford, tough game. Chelsea could be a tough game. Tottenham could be a tough game. We don't know. Tottenham seem to be on free fall now as well. United, I mean, it's United against Everton. It's always a 3-pointer for United. In time immemorial, that's always been a United win. Fulham flying high this season. Mitrovic looking every bit the bargain that he should have been for other clubs, maybe Tottenham. Palace, as you said, Golly, they could go either way on the day, but probably a 6-pointer in that at that point. And Newcastle, they're having their downfall a little bit, but they're still up there. Brighton flying high again this season, showing that Graham Potter was maybe not the defining characteristic of that team's success. City in the third last game. Wolves could go either way, and then Bournemouth at the end of the season. I mean, that's a tough run of games, isn't it, really, for Sean Dyche?
It definitely is. And I think that when you look at that, they're not very good. I mean, I can't tell you how happy would I be if Bournemouth can win at Goodison on the last day of the year to stay up and send Everton down. Like, how great would a late goal by Solanke be? Like, at Goodison? And he'd just
Sleeper
be running
agent
around.
Solanke.
He would be running around looking stupid like he had no clue. He would literally, because he's confused every time he scores, because he's confused that he's still a Premier League player. He thinks to himself all the time, like, I can't believe this club paid $35 million for me and took me up from the championship with them. He was amazing last year. And you know what'll happen next year when he's in the championship? He'll probably lead the league in goals. He'll be amazing again. But he's not a Premier League striker.
I believe that's called the Steve Bull effect. If anybody remembers Steve Bull from Wolves, fantastic in the championship, terrible in the top division.
It's basically what we've witnessed it. I mean, Leicester had it for a few years when they were the yo-yo side, right? They had those players that would score them all the goals. They get up to the Premier League and then they go buy a striker in January and then get sent back down. But it's just one of these things. I would love to see Everton go down, but looking at that fixture list, I see enough draws for them to maybe pip Leeds. And I'm telling you right now, I still don't believe Forest is safe. They get random wins, but they lose home matches against teams they're supposed to beat. And when you do that in this league and you need points, at the end of the year, there's one or two of them outside of your range. And like West Ham proved last week, they're nowhere near the relegation zone. They might have been there in the standings. They're not there as the table.
Trevor, a question though. Let's say the Schadenfreude brilliant thing happens for us and Everton do go down. Do they come straight back up, or is it going to be a long period in the wilderness like it was for Leeds?
No, I think they would come right back up just because of the sheer talent they have is, I think, way too good. If a team like Norwich can be a yo-yo side, or Fulham for all of the fiscal malpractice they had their first two attempts at coming up and going back down, yada yada, Everton should be able to come right back up. But it would be nice to just have them be that yo-yo team now. Just have them be in the same conversation as Norwich of, oh man, Everton, they got right back up, but oh, look at that, they're going to go right back down again. That'd feel good.
Gally, if they do go down, does Pickford leave?
Absolutely. Pickford leaves no matter what. Pickford leaves if they stay up in 18th or 17th place, in my opinion. I think Pickford ends up at Tottenham after this year replacing Lloris. I also think there's a shot he goes to United if they decide to move on from De Gea, but they may look for a bigger name because Ten Hag is kind of taking steps forward, I think, on the level of class player they're bringing in. But I think Pickford looks like a player who should be in Tottenham, arguing with Arteta, putting his finger in his face in the North London Derby. It just sounds right to me. I think Pickford leaves. Well, that would be even better. But I think Pickford leaves. I think Onana leaves no matter what, but I think Onana goes to like a big club because I think he's a real talent. It's the only class player they have right now playing in their side. And there's maybe a couple other players that would end up being Premier League fodder. But again, if they go down, I actually think they have. I'm going to disagree with Trevor a little bit. I don't think they can yo-yo right back up, even with the $100 million balloon payment that you get for the parachute payment for going down. They'll be so far off financial fair play with the high wage bill that they have. They'll have no choice but to sell players. And by sell players, they're going to be selling like Dominic Calvert-Lewin. They're going to be selling big players. And it's one thing to go to a club like Everton and take the payday because you're playing in the Premier League in front of a big crowd in a city like Liverpool every single week. It is a different story to play in front of those shites in the Championship, them booing you every week, not happy about playing Sean Dyche football, playing Championship football in the Championship. I think they would have to sell a lot. And it would be great when they build like the greatest, most expensive stadium in all of England, and they're playing in League Two.
Oh, I was going to say the exact same thing. They'd probably end up in League Two. In terms of just Trevor, in terms of the Liverpool Everton thing, would we miss them, or has the relationship become too toxic and poisonous? Rather than that, there was a sort of 80s heyday when the English press could go on about how Liverpool and Everton fans could sit together in the stands, etc. It was a different type of derby. But it's been toxic since at least 1995, as far as back as I remember. It's just been an awful relationship from their point of view. Do you think we would miss them, or would we revel each week in pointing at them being mid-table in the Championship?
Oh, there would be no missing. As much there's nostalgia with it, and a lot of people want to go. It's an easy 3 points, and you have that history and everything. Nah, good fucking riddance. Get gone, and yeah, I think they could yo-yo back up if they're not, if they take that Leeds or Sunderland route into the depths of the pyramid, I couldn't care less. Just wouldn't bother me a bit.
Gally, you're usually knowledgeable about these things. Is there any loopholes in UEFA and Premier League rules where we could parachute the Divock Origi into Bournemouth for that last game of the season, so maybe he could put the winning goal on them from a Jordan Pickford mistake?
It would be absolutely amazing. I'm not sure there is that rule. I'm pretty sure by then he'll probably have like 2-3 pieces running a runway somewhere in Milan during the fashion show with his new entourage and his new plans. So I don't even know. I think if they saw Divock show up right now, they would probably ask if like the Project Runway crowd was coming with them and not like a football pitch and the football fucking squad. So I don't think anyone's afraid of Divock right now except for Divock, because he's about a week and a half away from getting released from AC Milan and never playing again. He has 2 goals on the whole season.
He's too sexy for his goals.
He is a little too sexy for his goals. Good point. No, I think what ends up happening though with Everton, and I've said this before, I think they struggle finishing, but I think they find a way to hang on. If they were to go down, could they drop down? Sure. Would we miss the matchups? I don't think we would. Like, they're terrible. They're 2 matches a year where you actually go into them hoping to win 1-0 because there's just as good of a chance for a 0-0 draw. They actually sometimes have a little bite to them, but most times they're lackluster because neither team wants to lose. So you just come out playing for a draw. We think we're better than them. And in times like this season where we don't score, there's every bit of chance that we could end up with that 0-0 draw unless they make a mistake or something bad happens. And on top of everything, do you think like Newcastle right now minds? that they have to like wait for cup matches to have a Tyneside derby? They don't. They love laughing at Sunderland in the next division. Would they like to play them and have the battle in the crowds and the crazy ass trips? Of course they would, right? And Cardiff and Wales, or Cardiff and Swansea, they always say like we have to be in the same division. We should always be in the same division. Nobody's worried that Aston Villa isn't in the same division as Birmingham City. Like, it's fun when they play each other. But I almost think it's better they don't play each other twice every year. It makes it that much more special when it happens. So, like, I always hope Sunderland advances in a cup series and gets to play Newcastle. That's fun for me. Like, I wake up to watch that game on some shitty ESPN channel or whatever thing I don't want to. Tranmere ain't making it to no goddamn cup match to play us. It's fucking Tranmere, people. They got a waterlogged pitch and it's May.
What was I going to say? In terms of you know, I think, yeah, you're probably right that the derby would become a bit more special if we didn't play them twice a year. But I also think, I'm sure you lads can agree with me, that our physio room would probably be grateful to not have to play them 2 times a year. And we have players that aren't getting deliberately injured over 180 minutes. But let's move on from Everton, because I'm getting a nasty taste in my mouth, and I just had my dinner before we came on, and I don't want to be throwing it up in front of everybody. And let's kind of join two things together. We'll talk about the Wolves game that happened, and we'll tie it in to the Man United game this weekend, okay? So it was a good result, a good second half performance against Wolves. Van Dijk got on the score sheet, which was nice to see. Salah got on the score sheet, which was nice to see. Generally, a much better performance than when they beat us 3-0, I think. But are we wolves in sheep's clothing? Because Manchester United are on a high now. Ten Hag has got his first trophy with them. They are playing quite well. Is this one of these things where we're going to have the conversation again that, you know, this is the real us, and then we collapse again? Or will the United game be enough of a motivator that we will continue how we played against Wolves, Trevor?
Yeah, this has been a season where we've always waited for that corner to be turned, and it just, every time we turn, we hit a wall. And this is probably not the greatest time to be facing United, given the streak that they're on in terms of just all of their guys kind of clicking simultaneously. Like, Casemiro is scoring regularly, which is just wild to me. And Rashford and Fernandes kind of being in just this weird simpatico where in past years, and granted it could be a managerial thing, where they were always just pointing fingers at each other. Now the only time they're pointing fingers at each other is when one sets up the other for a goal. And I'm not super confident about it, but kind of just breaking that spell of the Wolves game from before, where a team that couldn't fucking put a ball in the ocean put 3 past us, to be able to shut them down and bring them back to their needed reality that they are Wolves, the team with 0 strikers, was nice. But we'll see how we line up for this weekend. It's gonna be interesting. Getting up for Man United is something that should just come natural to these guys. But we'll see what Klopp has in store in terms of who he deploys.
Gali, just kind of stepping back into the Wolves game a little bit. There was something about the performance that was maybe more mature than we've seen in a lot of the games this season. One of the things that struck me watching it and then like looking it back, something about our average position there, that's quite compact, isn't it? It was hopefully by design, but it was almost like we finally remembered what it was that made us great in the previous years, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think a part of it is we had 2 kids out flanking a, unfair to say rejuvenated Fabinho, but let's at least acknowledge a better version of the Fabinho than we've seen this year, right? But it was 2 kids outside of him, and I think that alone allowed them to stay compact and actually command the midfield. When we went into this match saying the weird thing is we're playing Wolves, and on paper they have the dominant midfield, which is like just piss in your own mouth. Like, this is ridiculous. Why are you even thinking this? Like, why would you say this? But it's, between Neves and Moutinho and Nunez and Sarabia and even Dendoncker. Dendonker's at Villa now, but they're still deeper all across their midfield. And I think that starting Elliott and Bajcetic was a big call for Klopp because he doesn't usually go with two kids at once, right? In any kind of line of the pitch, right? And he went with it there. Obviously, I think Nunez creates his havoc. He runs like a crazy person. I think Kazi still has it best with his analogy of he's like a wild horse in a mall. Like, you just don't know what he's going to bounce off, who he's going to kill, what he's going to trample, but no one can stop watching because it's just this crazy, entertaining, masterpiece. And I think that when you have that type of player running in front of a midfield that's stable and kind of creating that kind of shield in front of the back four, and in this match, both Tsimikas and Trent were able to get forward without leaving too much space behind. And I just think it was like kind of a perfect storm, led to the second half goal. But let's be honest, if we don't get the goal from Virgil, who the hell knows where this goes? Because it was getting squeaky bum all afternoon. I mean, as soon as VAR took the goal away from Darwin, which another kind of, 6-1, half dozen to the other, that's a foul. Is it a clear and obvious error that VAR should be correcting? I don't know. Yeah. But they have to look at everything leading up to every goal because the whole point of VAR is to decrease goals in football, even though I thought the whole point of VAR was to get calls right and give us more goals.
Trevor, Gally mentions there that for a very, very rare moment, Klopp plays two kids in the same tactical line. Is there a lesson there for Klopp that maybe he should trust the kids a little bit more?
It should be, but I think it was more just a necessity for him at this point because there was just pretty much nobody there that either he would trust to kind of flank Fabinho in the state that he's in, or B was physically capable to play 70 minutes. And giving and Bajcetic is a guy that we've kind of sung the praises for over and over again, is a guy that brings kind of veteran stability from a young guy, but being able to give that opportunity to Harvey and not just strand him over on an island and be like, hey, kid, you're going to get the ball 9 times. Don't fuck up. And kind of just give him, and from the average positions you showed, a little more to do in the center of the pitch and kind of try to find those outlets instead of just having him be the outlet was, I think, very beneficial for him in terms of his future progression and things that he'll be able to do either as a starter or as a substitute going forward, because he's a very just dynamic and versatile player, but he has to be able to be played in a way that utilizes his strengths rather than just go, hey, kid, you're a youth. I almost said youth like Joe Pesci and why am I spacing on that? My cousin Vinny. Yeah. And it's just give the kid an opportunity to kind of be part of the flow instead of just in his own stream.
Gally, I don't want to put unfair comparisons on the kid, but Bajcetic, as Trevor said, he's been a light in the dark almost at times when he's played. But maybe not so much in terms of impact, but certainly in terms of playing style and his willingness and desire to drive forward with the ball. Does he at all remind you of Steven Gerrard when he was that age?
A little bit. I mean, I think there was a raw talent that you just saw in Steven Gerrard, like just the fire and a little bit more desire in him. And maybe it was just the crazy, peach fuzz, bald, shaved head, and just that like he looked like an English kid who was running up and down the pitch, and you just kind of got confused because you were like, is he gonna knock the other guy out? Is he going to knock knees and just fall over? Like what is going on here?
Pure hooligan energy.
Then he would swing he'd swing that right peg at a ball, and you'd be like, oh boy, that's a talented young man. I mean, he was 16, 17 years old, and you could see it. Or 18, whatever it was, he made his debut. I think with Bastich, what you see is, I think you see unbridled confidence, and I think that comes from the fact that he had been training with the first team for 18 months before he got his debut. And to that, I give Klopp a ton of credit. We criticize him for not rotating enough. We criticize him maybe for not bleeding in enough youth or giving people chances and how long it takes a newcomer at the side to get in. But I think he does bring kids out of the youth academies and give them opportunities to play. And I think for that, and by play, I mean train. And that's really where they learn whether or not they can play with these guys. And I think what happened with Bastich is he figured out early this year he could compete with these guys. And in training every day, he made sure the manager knew he was just as good. And when all these guys were faltering, the manager said, well, let's give this kid a chance. And I mean, let's be honest, he's been our best player since his first start. Like at the whole club, which is probably the biggest indictment of the club.
In terms of Elliot, Trevor, as I think about you and Gali said, he had a little bit more freedom, almost to improvise his game against Wolves. But that energy that he had on that side, we talked about that triangle before at the start of the season, Salah, Trent, and Elliot. But it's almost becoming noticeable now that when Henderson's in there, something different happens to it, doesn't it? And that maybe Elliot is the one we should be trusting more.
Yeah, and everybody's big thing with Hendo is just his composure and his leadership, and the fact that he's very quick with a pass. But on the flip side of that, he's also very slow and very vulnerable when it comes to the ball going in the other way on a mistake. Whereas Elliot may make more mistakes, but I think can make up for it in a more consistent fashion than Hendo does. So you got to take that good with the bad. And with Elliot in that spot, and like you said, that triangle, being able to kind of work those overlaps effectively and get the ball to Trent to get crosses in and get the ball to Mo to let him work his magic. I think Elliot just kind of needs these consistent opportunities, not one start every 2 weeks. And when he comes on as a sub, he comes on for 8 minutes. That does him no good. You either have to start making subs earlier and give the kid like a half an hour to cook, or you got to start him. And depending on who they're facing in these final double-digit amount of fixtures, we'll see just how much run Elliot gets. I hope he gets the majority of it, just for one, his development, two, his comp. Because you hit the nail on the head with Bajcetic. He's not a world beater, but he's a guy that fucking exudes confidence. He's not afraid of anybody. He's not afraid to kind of get into the thick of things in any fashion. And we need to kind of have Elliot get to that point as well.
Gali, kind of keeping that team but bringing it in towards the next match. Would you trust Bajcetic and Elliot and Fabinho as the midfield against Manchester United?
It's a great question. I was wondering when you were going to ask about the lineup, and I don't think I would. I'm not going to lie. So it's one thing to do it against Wolves. I think it's another thing to do it against the informed team in England, and that's who United is. They just won a trophy, and they've won, 13 out of 15 matches. They advanced past Barcelona. I mean, we all laugh at it. They're probably going to win at least 2, if not a treble. Like, there's a very good chance they win the FA Cup and the Europa League, and that's a big deal when you're also weren't in Champions League last year and you're winning your way back into it again. So that's a big, that's the trajectory we were trying to get on when we weren't winning trophies for years and years and years. And we thought we were back, and we were losing in those finals, by the way, and they won it. So they're in a further advanced moment than we were when Klopp first came in Ten Hag's first year there. And he has a better lineup. He has better talent. I personally would start. See, and I disagree here. I wouldn't start Hendo because I'm with Trevor. I think Hendo looks tired, looks slow, and a step off. Now we still have more points per Henderson start than per Elliott start, and Elliott has played in every single match of every single game on offer for Liverpool this year. So let's not make it out like he isn't getting his opportunities. He's gotten a lot of them, and he found the bench because he got really inconsistent from the World Cup on to when he stopped starting around the beginning of January. So I don't feel for Harvey Elliott. I feel like Harvey Elliott has gotten more of an opportunity at 19 or 20 years old than a lot of Liverpool's players ever have. And I think he's had his ups and his downs, and I think what Klopp is doing is similar to what Guardiola did with Foden. It's not too much too soon, because if you let this kid think he is the next coming of Liverpool Football Club, he's got it in his personality to let that go to his head. Like, let's not kid ourselves. I love Harvey Elliott. He's got a little Jackie Grealish in him. You can see it. You can smell it. Like, it's in his persona. It's what makes him who he is. I don't think it's Henderson. I think it's Milner. And the reason I say that is I think James Milner didn't play in the last match so he could be fit to start against United. Whether that is at right back and everyone is upset, or that is at right midfield supporting the right back that everyone will get upset at after Rashford torches him on the left.
Trevor, I mean, you kind of think that we probably do need that bit of responsibility in there. And if it's not going to be Hendo, then it can't be Keita. We just can't trust Keita with it.
He's done. Never again. Can't see him again.
Thiago, Chamberlain is just like, regardless of injury status, Milner would still be the standout. He'd still be the standout leadership figure. But do things change in that sense in the midfield now that we have Konate back and that bit more of extra security between him and Van Dijk? Does that change how the midfield looks and how it behaves against Manchester United?
Not yet, and especially because Konate is, I think, a guy that we still need to see play a good run of games and not come up lame. Because when he plays, Konate is easily one of my favorite players, because he's a guy that is just willing to do everything that you want from a central defender, especially one playing next to a guy the caliber of Virgil van Dijk. He does everything from cover to moving forward. It's a breath of fresh air. But he's a guy that that has 3 weeks on the sidelines just coming up. You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know why it's going to happen, but you just know it's going to happen. And you kind of almost have to like pencil that into the schedule of just, okay, we got these 3 games against here, and then there's 3 games where Konate is going to be injured, and what are we going to do there? And I don't hate the notion of putting Milner in there to kind of just give not only Trent that cover, but kind of that kick in the ass of the guy that's not afraid to go over to him when Trent is not where he's supposed to be. Just kind of take him by the scruff of the neck and be like, kid, get the fuck back. And I think that's what Milner would do. But yeah, I don't think that any midfield amalgamations is going to be changed by Konate's presence. And to sum it all up, I agree with Gally. No Keita, no ever.
Brian Shelton says that he sees our point. So clearly one of us is wearing underwear that's a bit too tight. So we want to watch that for the next episode, lads. Before we move on to the next thing, score predictions. Gally, what do you think the United game is going to go like?
I'm going to stay bullish. I'm going to say we nick it and we win 1-0 and we go 4 clean sheets in the league in a row. and we do set ourselves off on a real run. It's the only way that this actually rebounds is that we win a match like this at home. We're supposed to. We get up for it. We show up. You know, our best defenders play. We play our best defense. We find a way to keep an informed team out. They get that thing 1-0. And I think if you beat United in this match, I think you're actually the favorite to finish fourth, and you have a actual outside puncher's chance to finish third.
Trevor?
He stole my score, so I have to add a little wrinkle to it. We're actually going to get a penalty. That's going to be the one goal.
That makes me feel worse.
It's gonna be like a unicorn ran across Anfield as a pitch invader.
I will say this right now, and I'm not even kidding about it. If James Milner is on the pitch and they get a penalty at 0-0, he's taking it.
Oh yeah,
1000%. Klopp made the comment the other day. James Milner is still on penalties, though the last 4 times he's been on the pitch and got a penalty, he gave it to Mo. But James Milner is still on penalties for Liverpool. If they have a chance at a penalty, he will take it. Because
against United, 100%.
And I'll want him to take it. I mean, the guy's missed 1 penalty in his entire professional EPL career. It's an amazing record that he has. And the reason I'd want him to take it is he is the leader. And I think that's why he has to start, honestly. If Henderson doesn't start, James Milner has to be in the starting lineup. Because the team actually doesn't perform as well when Van Dijk wears the armband. We get less than like 2 points a match in his starts as the captain. And I think it's because he focuses more on leading the whole side instead of just leading the defense, which is what he loves to do. And he worries about arguing with the refs and talking for the players and defending people. And I think that's why you need that general on the pitch. And I genuinely think that Milner starts this match because I just can't see. Klopp is a good enough manager not to put Henderson out there against United at home on a Sunday afternoon, late afternoon. Like, it could get so ugly for him with Casemiro and McTominay, or even, like, I could see Fred just running past him and me just being like, bring out the coffin. It's WWE. Like, The Undertaker is putting him down. Fred just did him at Anfield. Like, it would just be god-awful.
Hit the gong.
I'm going to book the trend tiny bit. I'm going to give one of those predictions that makes Timuchin's teeth itch. I'm going to say we're going to win it, but we're going to win it in the first half and then just control the second half. That's my prediction.
Painful.
And with a penalty, just to keep Trevor happy. So let's move on to the last serious topic of the night. Graham Potter and the chamber pot of wingers. He was the football darling, the coaching darling after Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe has shown his mettle. He's shown that the talent was never just a rumour. But Graham Potter is suffering badly, public image-wise, for all of the praise he got as Brighton coach, because he's really doing a bad job at Chelsea right now, isn't he, Gally?
I absolutely agree. So you all know I'm Italian. I've made the jokes. Excuse me, anyone who listens to the Monday Night Podcast knows that I've, talked about Conte and his crazy wig and how I would take that crazy Italian as my manager any day of the week, right? Graham Potter made the mistake when he actually turned down interviewing for Tottenham when the job was open because he thought he was building something at Brighton. Because I think Graham Potter's style would have fit with what Tottenham does and the way Tottenham operates. They wouldn't have bought a bunch of players. He would have been asked to coach players the way Pochettino was. He would have had talents like Son and Kane. They bought additional players, Richarlison. They had Kulusevski. Chelsea always felt like the worst absolute fit for Potter. He was building something at Brighton with young players with talent. And he was dropped into Chelsea and they bought him £400 million worth of garbage. I mean, honestly, they spent $500 million and the best player they got is on loan and they don't have an option to fucking buy him. Like, it's asinine. And then the funny part is, the most talented player of all the players to play there who actually looks like he has the best upside, the guy they're talking about buying back, is playing at Roma. Like, They let Tammy Abraham go to bring in Lukaku just to let him play a year and then send him back to the place they bought him from for $120 million. And now they're thinking about spending $75 million on the guy that they sold to Roma for nothing in a bag of balls. They deserve everything bad that happens to them at Chelsea. And I feel bad that Graham Potter will be kind of a victim of their poor man management. They keep saying they're going to stay with him. I almost think that's worse for Potter. I think the best thing for Potter right now would be to be fired and replace David Moyes at the end of the year in West Ham and take them to right back to Europa League spots. Why? Because he'd have mediocre talent who was going to fight for something and young players he could groom through. Chelsea is a bunch of literally retreads and overspent players who have overinflated contracts and even bigger egos. And I don't see how it gets any better. There's such rot there. And at the end of the year, they'll probably sell their 4 best players, which just makes me even happier.
Trevor, there's a lot of things that Gali said right there in that YouTubeable, Instagrammable rant.
100%. I apologize.
But Brighton are still doing well. Brighton are still doing well without Graham Potter. So is it possible that Graham Potter was not the X factor there, and maybe their recruiting team were probably more responsible? Or did they just look out with the manager they have now being at least just as good as Potter, if not better?
No, I think Potter set a good framework for how that team was going to operate. But it goes back to what you said. The front office went and got a guy that was going to take that roster the way it was constructed and be able to at least hold the line or move forward. They didn't get a guy and just smash a square peg into a round hole. They got De Zerbi, a guy who was going to try to instill the same philosophies and play the same way, but with his own little twist to it. And he's been just as successful in certain aspects and even more in others. So I don't think Potter's role in where Brighton is now should be diminished. Just like I agree that he I don't know what his buyout would be, but I would just go into Todd Bowley's office or a Zoom call, whatever the fuck he needs to do, and just go, yo, can you just get rid of me? Because I'm just done with this shit.
First of all, he has a 4-year contract, man. I didn't ask him for no goddamn buyout. This is Chelsea. They're still paying 3 different managers. I think Mourinho has 2 different fucking contracts from Chelsea. He's getting paid on right goddamn now. So there's 55 people. There's 800 guys on loan and 55 different managers getting paid by Chelsea Football Club right now. And nobody asking out of Chelsea. The job is just to get fired. Is he still alive?
I think so. Even if he's not, he'd still be getting paid. But
I'm sure the estate is getting something.
Yeah. But yeah, and West Ham, I agree. That would be a good landing spot because Moisey ain't long for that. I think they're just going to give him to the end of the year as kind of like a lifetime achievement award and then just kind of send him on his way. But there's so many teams that could utilize Graham Potter's talents in a way that Chelsea is just kind of letting them boil in acid because when you buy that many players and none of them have any sort of cohesion or any kind of real fucking reason for doing anything, what do you expect anybody, even a guy that's in? What do you expect a guy that's been there before to do against a guy that is already proven to be way over his head?
My God.
Brian Shelton, they can't all be winners every week, Brian. We try our best here on Thursday.
I think he was talking about Chelsea, but
you never know.
It also goes for the last 44 minutes and 39 seconds.
But yeah, let's say, Potter is probably not long for the Chelsea hot seat. Maybe not this season, but probably next season if things continue the way they go. Let's move on for the last thing, because the cool kids are going to become cooler kids even more so. The threshold question, we haven't had a funny one for a while. So let's go this one. So Gally and Trevor, you have to erase one game from Liverpool's history. It never happened. It never existed. Which one do you choose between the 2005 Champions League final or the very first European Cup we won in 1977? The one that started it all and got us, into that echelon of the great teams, or probably the greatest Champions League final of all time.
I'll go first.
Okay.
This is crazy. I would erase 05. We were already European elite. We had already reached a pinnacle. And let's be honest, that 05 team was special. They were champions because they won on the field. They were nowhere near the best team in Europe. And we could have won it. We could have won different years, right? We could have won the year before. We could have won. There were so many different opportunities they could have won. The other losses to Milan in the finals. It was a great story. It's the best documentary. It's the most fun match to actually watch start to finish, to do the whole thing. And I watch it sometimes, and like my wife's always like, why don't you just start watching at halftime? And I'm like, because you have to go down 3-0 to actually enjoy the comeback. And she's like, no, you don't. You get to save 48 minutes of your life if you don't, and a lot of F-bombs. But you can't take away 77 because what it began, what it started and what it meant, and just everything that happened from it, and how 81 happened, and it just all built on each other. And I just think that that's when that special, as crazy as talking about not having 05, I think that not having the first one means we may never have the second.
Or 05. I think there was
that's the Red Sox fan in me being like, you can give me all the World Series titles you want, right? If they don't come back from down 3 games to the Yankees,
you got to have that first one.
They probably never get over anything. And I'm the fan who actually is like, I love the 03 team more than the 04 team, because if they don't lose in that miraculously painful way at Yankee Stadium, thinking you're going to win and it's all over tonight, if you don't lose that way, I don't even know that they have the stones to come back the next year and do it. And I think some of those wins and the losses leading up to 05 is what created the mystique that allowed for the Barca comeback, that allowed for the Dortmund comeback. I think those moments were built on all the nights, not just 05.
Trevor, what do you think?
Yeah, as much as 05 had the sculpting of my Liverpool fandom, I agree that you don't get the fire going without that initial strike of the match. And it kind of set things up for a long time, and just every single domino of eras of Liverpool football came from that first title. And 05 was a team where, and how many teams have since then have just kind of gone through that? They did that Champions League gauntlet where everything else in their campaign that year was just bleh. And while that final kind of glazes over how kind of drab the rest of that season was, I think you can kind of have it in a vacuum where you just kind of have that be its own thing. So, all right, I'm not going to particularly erase. I'm breaking the threshold question a bit. I'm not going to erase it. I'm just going to put it in a vacuum seal bag over here. So it's not part of the season anymore. It's its own separate entity.
Sous vide for 05.
Yes. A sous vide AC Milan final.
So me personally,
what do you got?
I'd keep 77 simply because Bill Shankly got to see it. And there's a radio thing that went around on the BBC Radio 4 that has an interview with Bill Shankly in the crowd. And like the happiness of that man alone for Bob Paisley winning the first European Cup, that means, like, for me, that
Right.
meant a lot more. And I was 1 year old when it happened, so you know it happened. The first one happened in my lifetime, so there's no quantum leap for me there. I could easily, happily go back to that through the particle accelerator thingy. But it just remains to say thank you, Gally and Trevor. We've come to the end of our show. All the cool kids, as we know, watch the Thursday night podcast. But if you're an even cooler kid, you will hang around for the Fantasy Football League show afterwards, which is pretty much immediately after, with Gally again and the Polish
Triple
Prince.
duty this week.
Yeah, myself and Matush gonna take us through this week, talk a little bit about how we both fared in last week's double game week, which basically means how we made mistakes bringing on a lot of Liverpool players into our sides. And also, you know, kind of gear people up for the next like 4 to 5 match weeks, which there's a couple blank weeks, there's a couple big double game weeks. So hopefully we'll have a little strategy talk about some transfers in and out, that kind of shit. So if you're a fantasy geek, jump in. And if you're not, well, watch, and I'll probably make an ass out of myself, and you can make fun of me tomorrow on social media.
Get your Brentford stacks ready.
That's what it's all about. Okay, thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Gally, and thank you, everybody who watched this, especially Brian, who's the comment master tonight. He's got all the comments today.
Yeah, I was going to say, Alan's got to have I think if Alan is basically Monday's sycophant, right, the Monday Night Podcast sycophant, Brian is definitely our Thursday night throwdown, because this dude had some comments tonight. Like, he might as well have just got the link and just jump in next time and give us his opinion.
Maybe we'll work on that.
Thanks, Brian.
So everybody should enjoy the game this weekend. Let's hope that it's the proper Reds, the legitimate Reds, the one who weren't Newton Heath in the previous life, get the win that we hopefully deserve. And we will be back, I believe, tomorrow morning for the morning coffee show. The fantasy show is up next. And then our Monday podcast on Monday, so you can see Bickler in all his glory, hopefully, and see how much shoutiness can go on in that one. But for everybody else, thank you for joining us. We will see you next time, and peace out.